Math! Hi everybody, this is Mr. Regner and welcome to another edition of The Aftermath. Today we're focused on focus once again for Focus Week 7, Day 2. Please feel free to follow along with this activity and we'll get started right now with number 1. Number 1 says, Mrs. Torres is mailing a package that weighs 11.25 pounds. The post office charges by the ounce to mail a package. How much does the package weigh in ounces? So in order to answer this question, we first have to know and understand that there are 16 ounces in a pound. That's so important, I'm going to start by writing that down on my paper. So here we are at my paper one more time here. I'm going to start off by saying for number 1, 16 ounces equals 1 pound. Now when I know that going into it, it makes my work much easier. So the package was 11.25 pounds and it's 16 ounces for 1 pound. So if that package were 1 pound, it would be 16 ounces. If it were 2 pounds, it'd be 16 times 2. Since it's 11.25 pounds, I take 11.25 and multiply it by 16. So remember our rules for multiplying when we have decimals? We ignore the decimals. Just go ahead and multiply as usual. So 6 times 5 is going to give me 30. 6 times 2 is 12 plus 3 gives me 15. 6 times 1 is 6 plus 1 is 7. 6 times 1 is 6. I add a 0 as my placeholder. 1 times 5 is 5. 1 times 2 is 2. 1 times 1 is 1. 1 times 1 is 1. Now I just need to add these up. So 0 plus 0 is 0. 5 plus 5 is 10. 7 plus 2 plus 1 is 10, 6 plus 1 plus 1 is 8, and 1 is 1. Now I can worry about my decimal points here. So in this one I have 2 spaces that I've moved. This one I have 0 spaces. So in my final answer I need to move my decimal over 2 spaces from the right. So that would be 1, 2 spaces. I put my decimal in here. So my final answer is that this package weighs 180 ounces. And that's our work for number 1. Let's go ahead and keep it rolling with number 2. Number 2 says, Kurt drew a rectangular maze with a length of 3/5 foot and a width of 7/12 foot. What is the area in square feet of Kurt's maze? So for this, we really want to make sure we understand the area formula for a rectangle because that's what we're dealing with. So I'm going to start with that, and you should remember this. The area equals base times height, or area equals length times width. So let's get to our paper and get to work. So as I start off for number 2, I'm just going to simply write down that area formula. Whether I choose length times width or base times height really doesn't matter because in the end it's kind of the same thing. So now I just substitute in the values that I know right from the problem. So it said the length was 3/5 foot, and then the width was 7/12 foot. So this is really a multiplication question, and we're multiplying fractions. So I know I can multiply straight across, or I could cross simplify at this point. And if I choose to cross simplify, it's going to make my life a little bit easier. So I'm all about making my life easier. Let me grab a different color here just so you can see the difference here. So I have 5 and 7. Now these are the cross factors, but they cannot be reduced. On the other hand, 3 and 12 can be reduced. They're both divisible by 3. So that 3 becomes a 1. And then this 12 divided by 3 is 4. So now I'm looking at 1 times 7, which is of course 7. And then 5 times 4, which is of course 20. Now 7 and 20 can't be simplified down anymore, so that's my final answer, and I'm going to say that it's square feet, or feet squared. Now if we didn't cross simplify, let me just show you what that would look like, just for fun. Okay, so we would have 3/5 times 7/12. Again, without simplifying, right? This would be 7 times 3, which is 21, and 5 times 12, which is 60. Well, these are numbers that we can definitely simplify. So both of these are divisible by 3. So again, if I just think to myself, what's 21 divided by 3 and 60 divided by 3? that's going to give me my answer. 21 divided by 3, coincidentally, is 7. 60 divided by 3 is 20. And I could label that feet squared. It's the same answer both times, no matter how we choose to do it. So there's our work for number 2. Let's go ahead and look at number 3. Number 3 says, a store has 13 boxes of peaches. Each box contains 25 peaches. How many peaches does the store have? So this is a classic case of multiplication. We're looking at this idea of having 13 boxes, and in each box is 25 peaches. So we could count them up, 25, 25, 25, 25, 25, 25, or we can just multiply. And that's what we're gonna do now. So let's take a look at our work. Here we are. So for number 3, it's just straight up multiplication. That's 25 peaches in a box and 13 boxes in all. So just taking the peaches per box and multiplying it by the total boxes. Let's see, so 3 times 5 is 15. 3 times 2 is 6, plus 1 is 7. I'll add my 0 as a placeholder. 1 times 5 is 5, 1 times 2 is 2. Now I'm going to add these together. So that's 5. 7 plus 5 gives me 12. 2 plus 1 gives me 3. That means my final answer is 325 peaches. Notice the label there is peaches because that's what the question is asking us for. So there's our work for number 3. We're on a roll. Let's keep it going on number 4. Now number 4 is kind of a logic question. We need to read the question carefully and really understand what it's asking us to do. So here it is. It says a 315-foot high swing at an amusement park can take 64 people on each ride. A total of 9,987 people ride the swing today. All the rides are full except for the last ride. Choose all of the statements that are true based on the information that is given. So we want to take a look at this and think about it for a moment. It's a swing. There's 64 people that can get on the swing at one time. All of the rides are full except the last one, and we know the total amount that rode that day. So if we just take the total amount of people that rode that day, divide it by the total amount of people that can ride on one ride, that's going to tell us how many rides were given on the swing that day. Now, if there's any rides that are not full, for example, the last ride of the day, that's going to be reflected in our remainder. So we basically have a division problem. Now you may be asking, what about the 315 feet? Is that important? Well, it might be important to know how tall the ride is, but for our work, it's not important at all. We don't need to know how tall the ride is. So let's get to work on our paper doing some long division. So here we are back at our paper. Here's number 4, and we're going to be dividing. So we have 9,987 people that rode the ride. We can divide that by the total amount of people that fit on one ride, and that's 64. So a thing that we might need to do here is guess and check. Don't be afraid to do that. So I know 64 doesn't go into 9. I have a feeling like 64 goes into 99 one time, and that would be 64. Now I can subtract. 9 minus 4 is going to give me 5, and 9 minus 6 will give me 3. So now I can bring down my 8. So I have to really think about how many times 64 goes into 358. I'm not sure on this one, so I'm going to do some work off to the side with my best guesses. So a logical guess, maybe I could think about 64 if I were to maybe round that down to 50, just for fun. And I have 358 here. Well, I know 50 is going to go into 350 about 7 times. So 7 times 64 is probably going to be more than I need here. Let me try 6 and just see what happens. So I'm going to take 64 times 6. And this is again where I'm guessing and I'm checking. So 6 times 4 is going to give me 24. 6 times 6 is 36, plus 2 is 38. That's 384, and as you can see, that one's not going to work out so well for me. Let me try and use some logic here. If I have 64 groups, and I take 64 away from 384, that's what 64 times 5 will be. And it looks like that's in the zone that I need to be. So I could work this out mathematically as well. So however you choose to do this is fine with me, as long as you're getting the work done correctly. So 5 times 4 is 20. 6 times 5 is 30 plus 2, that's 32. So 320. So I'm going to go ahead and plug in my 5 up top. 5 times 64, I already know, is 320. Now I can subtract. So 8 minus 0 is 8. 5 minus 2 is 3, and 3 minus 3 is 0. So now I have 38. I can bring down my 7, and there it is. So looking up here, I already know that 64 times 6 is 384. So wow, I just did all that work earlier, and I don't have to do it again. So let me plug in my 6 here. 6 times 64 is 384. I'll subtract. 7 minus 4 is going to give me 3. 8 minus 8, 3 minus 3 gives me zeros. So in looking at this, let me see if I can scooch my page up here. That always helps. I have 156 with a remainder of 3. So now I can take a look at my multiple choice options, and what this is going to tell me then is that I had 156 rides that were full of 64 people on each ride. But I also had 3 people that were left over for possibly that last ride of the day. So in taking a look at this, option A says 157 rides were needed, so all the people got to ride the swing today. Well, I ended up with 156 with a remainder of 3, so yes, I need to have 157 rides. I'm rounding up in order to answer this question. So if A is correct, that means B can't be correct, because B says that 156 rides were needed, and I know I need to round up. So A is correct, B is not. How about letter C? It says, to find how many rides were given, you do not need to use the 315. Well, that's absolutely true. We don't need to use the 315. That's known as a distractor. It's information we just don't need. So C would also be correct. Let's take a look at D. It says only 13 people were on the last ride of the day. Well, our remainder was 3, not 13. So I know it might get exciting to want to pick that, but it's not true. There weren't 13 people, there were only 3. So D is not correct. And then finally, letter E. If you use division, the remainder will be the number of people on the last ride. Well, of course, we used division. We got a remainder of 3, and that's how many people are on the last ride. So E is also correct. So there you have it. There's our focus for this week. Notice that on number 1, 2, and 3, we're multiplying. And then number 4, we're just dividing and using some logic to pick out the multiple answers. So I'm hopeful that this video has helped you to better yourself and better prepare you for your focus quiz later on this week. I'm Mr. Regner. This has been The Aftermath. Have a great day.
Math! Aftermath, it's the aftermath. Aftermath, it's the aftermath. Math class is fun, but when it's done, stay in the zone. On your own, it's math review, made just for you. Take a video wherever you go. Aftermath, it's the aftermath. Aftermath, it's the aftermath. Oh yeah.